Britt's secret comes out, and Jason is not going to take it well. Let us start with Jason and Britt, because this has been building quietly underneath all the louder drama, and it is about to arrive with the kind of impact that changes the shape of a relationship permanently. Here is what Jason does not yet know. While he was being held captive, while he was enduring everything that was done to him in that facility overseas, Port Charles was dealing with its own crisis. A man was walking around this town pretending to be someone he was not, presenting himself as a familiar face, bonding with people who trusted that face, inserting himself into situations that had real consequences for real people. And Britt knew. She knew the whole time. She knew who this man actually was, and she stayed quiet about it. The reason she stayed quiet was not without its own terrible logic. She believed at the time that she was dying. She believed she had a degenerative disease that was going to take everything from her, and the silence was purchased with medication she thought was keeping her alive. When survival feels like it is on the line, people make choices they would not otherwise make. Britt is not a villain in this story. She was a frightened woman who made a calculation under pressure and has been living with it ever since. But here is what that silence allowed to happen. The man impersonating someone trusted got close to people. He formed bonds under false pretenses. He helped cover up the truth about who fired the shot on that pier. And in doing all of that, he put Carly and Jocelyn in genuine danger. Two people that Jason loves without reservation. Two people he would walk through fire to protect without a second thought. And Britt knew. She knew the whole time. And she did not tell him. Now, Britt has had opportunities since Jason came back. They were at the hospital together. They had a conversation. Whatever the state of things between them romantically, the door was open for honesty. Britt could have said right there in that moment, "Here is something you need to know, here is what I kept from you and why, here is the full picture." She did not. She let it go. She told herself perhaps it was water under the bridge, perhaps enough time had passed that the urgency of disclosure had faded. That reasoning is about to collapse entirely. Jason is going to meet with Anna. And Anna, who is navigating her own complicated relationship with the truth right now, is going to say something, intentionally or not, that points Jason directly toward questions about Britt and Cassius and what Britt knew. Anna is not going to be speaking from a place of charitable generosity where Britt is concerned. The version of Britt that lives in Anna's mind right now, shaped by the voice that keeps intruding into her thoughts, is not a sympathetic one. Whatever Anna says is going to be colored by that. But the core of what she reveals will be accurate. And Jason, who absorbs information with the particular kind of stillness that is more unsettling than visible anger, is going to go straight to Britt with what he has just learned. When Jason confronts Britt, she will not be able to claim ignorance. She cannot say she did not know, or that she found out later, or that circumstances prevented her from coming forward. The truth is the truth, and it is going to be laid out in front of her with Jason standing right there waiting for her to either own it or deflect it. If Britt chooses complete honesty in that moment, if she tells Jason everything, explains the impossible position she was in, acknowledges fully that she should have trusted him with the truth regardless of the circumstances, there is a path through this. Not an easy one. Not one that immediately restores whatever they have been trying to build, but a path. If she defends herself, if she minimizes, if she makes Jason feel even slightly like he is the one being unreasonable for being upset, that path closes very quickly. Jason came back from captivity with a recalibrated relationship to deception. He has been through something that makes dishonesty feel not just wrong but personally threatening in a way it perhaps did not before. Being held, being controlled, being in a situation where information was withheld from him as a form of power. All of that makes the discovery that someone he trusted chose silence over truth particularly corrosive. He detests lies. He always has. But right now, that feeling has a rawness to it that was not there before he left. The romance between Jason and Britt has been a slow, careful, complicated thing. It has never been easy. It has never been simple. And now it is approaching the moment of real testing. The moment where either the foundation holds or it reveals that it was never quite solid enough to support the weight being placed on it. Port Charles is watching and holding its breath. JNZ goes to trial, and half of Port Charles should be very worried. Now let us talk about the trial that is coming, because Jen sitting in a courtroom is not just a legal proceeding. It is a grenade with the pin already pulled, and the only question is how many people end up in the blast radius. Here is what makes Jens so uniquely dangerous as a defendant. He is not just someone who committed crimes in isolation. He is someone who operated through a network, through agreements and blackmail and coercion and cooperation, pulling in people from every corner of Port Charles society. Some of them willing, some of them pressured, some of them deceived, but connected to him in ways that created a paper trail, a testimony trail, a web of evidence that does not conveniently disappear just because he is behind bars. When Jens goes to trial, his strategy is almost certainly going to be the oldest one in the book for someone who knows they cannot win outright. Take everyone else down with you. Sing like a canary, as loudly as possible, and make sure that whatever prison sentence is coming lands in a context where half of Port Charles is implicated alongside you. The names that immediately surface as vulnerable are significant. Drew, whose financial misconduct is already sitting in a black box that has changed hands multiple times. Willow, who obtained paralytic medication through Jens and used it to keep her husband locked inside his own body for months. Nina, who has been complicit in that scheme from the beginning, and who has now committed what is essentially attempted murder at the lakeside. Brennan, whose involvement runs deep, and whose deals have been operating just outside the boundaries of what anyone would call legitimate. Each of those names, spoken under oath in open court with whatever documentation Jens has managed to retain, represents a scandal, a legal exposure, a life that changes shape permanently the moment the testimony lands. And then there are the institutional connections. Deception Cosmetics has threads running through this story that have not been fully explored yet. The art gallery has its own history with operations that were not exactly above board. Even the hospital, that place of healing at the center of Port Charles' life, may find its name appearing in testimony that nobody expected. Jens has been around long enough and has operated broadly enough that the tentacles of his network reach places that will surprise people. Now here is the practical problem that actually limits how much damage Jens can do from his current position. His resources are gone. Windermere is a crime scene. Everything in his safe is in evidence, either with the Port Charles Police Department or with the WSB, given the federal dimensions of what happened with the Cullum situation. The shipping operation running out of Spoon Island has been shut down and its records subpoenaed. The infrastructure that made Jens powerful is dismantled. He cannot call in favors he cannot pay for. He cannot deploy people he no longer has access to, which raises the genuinely interesting question of who, if anyone, is still willing to work for him now that the money and the power and the protection are all gone. Loyalty that was purchased tends to evaporate when the purchasing stops. And then there is the attorney situation, which is its own particular kind of complication. The lawyers in Port Charles who are capable of mounting a serious defense in a case this complex have their own relationships with the people Jens would be implicating. Alexis, Diane, these are not people who are going to take on a client whose testimony could damage individuals they care about or have professional relationships with. Finding competent legal representation for a man who has burned every bridge in this town is going to be its own challenge. The darkly comic possibility, and it is not entirely out of the question given what we know about Jens' particular brand of arrogance, is that he decides to represent himself. He believes he is smarter than everyone around him. He has a megalomania that would find a certain appeal in standing in that courtroom and personally orchestrating his own defense. The problem with that approach, as any attorney in Port Charles could tell him, is that a person who represents themselves has eliminated the one buffer between their impulses and the record of the court. Every rambling accusation, every dramatic revelation, every attempt to implicate someone in open testimony, all of it enters the record without any filter. That might actually make things worse for everyone Jens wants to damage. Or it might make things unexpectedly worse for Jens himself, as the rope of his own testimony trips him up in ways a competent lawyer would have prevented. Either way, Jens on that witness stand, either through his own testimony or through whatever evidence the prosecution presents, is going to be one of the most consequential courtroom moments Port Charles has seen in years. The people who have been holding their breath since his arrest should probably keep holding it, because the explosion, when it comes, is going to be spectacular. Who does Jens still have, and what is he still capable of? And now let us dig into the question that keeps circling back through everything else, because it is not enough to know that Jens is in custody. What matters is what he can still do from there, and whether the network he built is truly as dismantled as it appears. The obvious answer is that Jens has lost most of what made him powerful. The castle is gone. The safe is empty. The shipping routes are shut down. The money that bought cooperation has stopped flowing. In a very practical sense, Jens has been stripped of the tools that made him dangerous. But the people he dealt with are still out there. Some of them are in Port Charles right now, going about their lives, hoping that their connection to Jens gets buried under the weight of everything else the investigation is focused on. Some of them made deals that insulated them from immediate legal exposure. Some of them have information Jens gave them that does not evaporate just because the source is behind bars. The question of whether Jens can still reach these people, whether he can communicate through channels that have not yet been identified, whether there is someone on the inside of some institution who still owes him something, is something the authorities should be taking very seriously, and may not be. Ezra has agreed to testify against him, which means the prosecution has at least one witness willing to speak to Jens' operations from a position of some knowledge. That is significant. That is a crack in the wall. But one cooperating witness does not tell the whole story, and Jens knows which parts of the story Ezra can actually tell. Sunny and Laura appear to be clear of direct entanglement, which is notable given how broadly Jens' network spread. The fact that those two specifically seem to be on the right side of this particular legal disaster says something about how carefully they have navigated things. Or possibly about how selectively the evidence has been assembled. What nobody should assume is that Jens is passive. Jens has never been passive a day in his life. Being in a cell does not transform a megalomaniac into a quiet man. It gives him time. It gives him motivation. It gives him the particular kind of focused energy that comes from having nothing to do but think about how to get out or how to make everyone else pay for putting him there. The trial is coming. The testimony is coming. And Port Charles, including Drew and Willow and Nina and Brennan, and everyone else who ever shook hands with Jens or took something from him or was coerced into his orbit, should be spending a great deal of time right now thinking very carefully about what they know and what they can prove and what they're going to say when someone finally asks them under oath. Because in Port Charles, the courtroom is where secrets go to die. And there are a lot of secrets that are about to be called to testify.